I want to show you how to stand out and sound more compelling to clients, because it's an essential business skill to develop, and indeed how to have conversations that are going to convert a lot more leads, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And I'm feeling really generous today, and I'd love to offer the person who is engaging in the webinar a lot, who is asking questions, sharing their comments, sharing their opinions, a free place on my online Steps to Win program. Now, this isn't a bribe, it is an opportunity for you to share what you have learned also, because I am very aware that we have a lot of knowledge and expertise on the call. And I think what's wonderful about the IACC community is that there are many opportunities for you to share that wisdom and learn and share what you have learned, because there's no point in reinventing the wheel, right? A lot of us have the same challenges, and we might as well put them out there. But a really powerful skill that you can develop in this industry is to be relevant to your clients. And it's really no longer enough to be this bubbly and friendly personality and remembering people's names and their kids' names and important dates and that type of thing. Today's business world is about how relevant can you be to your clients and really helping them in their role. Now, we have a number of different types of people in terms of the roles and positions on the call, and I'd like to share a few frustrations that I have heard in the industry from 4 to 5 years of delivering different workshops and programs throughout the world, whether it's an in-person capacity or online. And a big one, how do I generate more conversations with potential clients? Because it is harder and harder. And the bottom line is we really need to earn this opportunity to get that either face-to-face or that phone conversation. We, there's a lot of people wondering, how do I grow my conversion rates? How do I really make an impact? A lot of general managers and directors need to grow their position in the star report, perhaps, or their position in their competitive set. And a lot of directors are asking, how can I help my team to win more business at better rates? So we're going to take a look at that also. Okay, so you might be wondering, who am I? Where am I coming from with all of this? I am a hotelier by heart, I would say still. I have about 12 years of experience in the conference meeting industry on the hotel side, working in San Francisco with the Intercontinental Hotel Group, and I opened the Omni San Francisco Hotel 3 months after 9/11. So I really do understand what it's like to work and operate in a tough sales environment. But what I realized was, with all of the great trainings that I went through with these two brands that are very conference centric, I really didn't gain what I call the client's perspective. And that's something that I very much bring to the table. It is what I developed once I started my own business as a venue finder. And when I moved back to Ireland, I founded findaconferencevenue.com, and that gave me much different types of conversations with conference and event organizers and planners. And it really helped me to see how the venue sells to me as a potential buyer or as an influencer. And I still call up my directors and my mentors, and I tell them, you know what? If I had just got this kind of training, this kind of perspective to look back at my business, at the hotel business from the client's perspective, I would have sold even more for you, because I was successful. I always beat budget, but it just gives you a completely different perspective when you start looking at what you are doing from your client's point of view. And I got frustrated really in seeing why business was being lost. And I started to write this book, The Steps to Win. And from that, I developed out the steps to win in terms of how the client buys, how the meeting, conference, and event planner buys. And I'm going to share you or save you the heartache and a lot of the work that went into that over 4 years. And we'll give you an insight into just one of the chapters today. And this is the steps to win. Today, a lot of the work that we'll be doing will help you in these first few steps, in particular with number 2, they're building out your power sales toolkit. And it really will help you at step number 5 in how to conduct a wow site tour or the show around of your venue or hotel space. Okay, so have we everybody in the right room? Is everybody here for the right reasons? Are you interested in this? Let me know, and we'll keep going. So I did a little research today for this webinar, and what was a lot of the message that I was really seeing on a lot of the websites of the venues that are present today. And this is a fairly good summary of it. But what I suggest here is that if you're mainly selling these, which absolutely are important to the success of an event, but if this is what you're mainly selling and talking about, or if this is your main point of difference, you are selling yourself short. And we need to peel back the layers and really go further and have the confidence to ask, well, what would be success? What would be the definition of success to you? And we'll talk a little bit more about that and how you can find out more on that topic towards the end of the webinar. But the bottom line is this, that the clients, they don't care about your venue. They ultimately care about their problems. So we need to be able to have that kind of conversation with the planner and be relevant and hold more strategic business conversations with them. And a really key area of sales right now is to be able to tap into the emotions that are behind the sale, because it's a biological fact. The part of the brain that makes a decision doesn't understand price or facts. It only understands how you make it feel. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying price isn't important, but in my days as a venue finder, it rarely was the #1 factor. And even in my conversations now with planners, I will ask them, to rank their decision factors, and price can be number 3 and even number 4. So let's look at some ways that we can dive a little bit deeper into understanding the emotions behind the sale, because getting your tools correct in this market, in the conference, event, and incentive market, is a massive part of your success. Strategy is important. It gives you direction, but ultimately the right tools are going to help you to get there quicker. And it's these power sales tools that I talk a lot about. And getting your conversation technique right and how you frame the conversation is a very important part of that. And these killer questions, as I call them, do you have a checklist, or can you just wing conversations sometimes? We need to be able to lead the conversation through, take control and lead that conversation. A big question that is always asked early on in the client conversation is, what is the setup style? And I suggest that we could change that around a little bit and ask, what will people be doing in the room? Because that gets the client talking a lot more about their event and helping to think it through. Part of your role is to help them get clarity on an event also. And when you ask what is the setup style, you're going to get a one-word answer: theatre, cabaret, classroom, whatever that may be. So may I suggest that we can open up the conversation another little bit with just twisting it. What will people be doing in the room? Because Mark, I'm quite sure that you're seeing in the research that you've are doing that there's different things been done in the room, right? Setups are a bit more funky and different, and it's no longer just a one-way exchange of information. Would you agree?
100%, Kiara. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about a one-way presentation. Whilst there are still still some traditional forms of delivery out there, the majority now of training courses and meetings are have a high degree of collaboration involved in it, and that two-way communication, taking the power from the presenter and putting it into the hands of the participants. And to do that, it does, you're right, affect the setups for meeting rooms, and meeting rooms that need to be, not only set in a certain way, but they are set up in different ways throughout the day for different elements of the meeting or the training course. So yeah, it really is key and important to understand exactly what what it is they're looking to do in the room or achieve, so that you
Yeah.
can match.
Yeah. And a lot of the time it will open up an opportunity to upgrade them to a larger room and gain, higher revenue on that. But the important part here is it's an opportunity for you to consult and not just take an order. Curiosity is a really important a skill to develop, and ask a little bit more. And, don't be afraid of asking why. Why is that important? What will you be doing? Because Brian here, he would be an example of a person that I made the biggest impact on in 2 weeks. When he changed the conversation that he had with a client, he won a piece of business worth 5 million. And he said, Ciara, that conversation technique just helped him to get it over the line. He felt that the relationship changed when he started asking different questions, and he could feel them just draw closer. And so it really is an example of how you can go from, being a part of the big mix of competitors to really just standing out, standing apart when you change the kind of conversation that you're having with clients. And, what kind of conversations are we having to open up doors? I had a sales manager on one of my webinars, and she expressed complete and utter frustration at not being able to get the planner to call her back. So I asked her, well, what kind of voicemail are you leaving? And she said, well, I leave my name, the hotel or the venue that I'm calling from, and I'm calling to see if they have any conference needs. So, question to you guys, if I call that person back, do you think I'm going to have to listen to a sales pitch? Is it really enticing? Is it building trust and confidence? Is it sounding a little bit compelling or intriguing? Probably not, right? So we really have to show in the sales process that you're going to be of value to the client, and there's something in it for them, and you're not just trying to sell your venue. Perhaps you could leave a voicemail such as, I have some really great ideas on how to get your attendees networking more, participating and connecting at your events. Could we set up a time for me to share those with you? So subtle difference there, but all of a sudden that conversation is of more value to the client, and it's going to be a conversation about them and not about you. So let's look at some of the beliefs that I have seen in my 5 years of training. And I'd like to challenge some of these. Number one, that my role is just to sell the space and talk about the venue and send out proposals all day. And Bex here for sure, thought that. And she really was stuck in a rut of just churning out proposals. When we're overwhelmed, could have 10 proposals to send out in a day. And we can easily get caught in this trap of just copy paste, changing the space, dates and rates, and just, as I call it, you know, spitting out proposals or churning out proposals. And I did that in my sales days. I did that for sure. And I worked for, in my first job, for 2 very busy sales managers. And literally that's what I spent my time doing. And I never asked, what do I need to put in this proposal that's really going to help me convert the business? So we're going to look at some techniques for that today. So Bex, she believed that she had to do all the talking when she did get the client on the phone, or in particular at a site inspection. And she believed she couldn't influence what the participants or delegates got from a conference. So have we anybody on the call today that you know, that feel that, you know, that you don't have and can't have an impact on what your the participants, your conference planners guests get from attending a conference? Just, you know, quick yes or no there. Let's see what's happened there. Space design does have a massive effect on the outcome and indeed the results of a conference. And, you know, we can look at some ideas on how important it is to talk about the layout of this conference in the meeting space, and indeed, you know, the impact that this has ultimately at the end of the day. Because spending time walking through the networking space with the planner is vital to converting more business. And are we talking about the space in terms of the impact that it has on the attendees? So if you're up to date and able to educate the conference planner on the space and how to best utilize it to help their delegates get more from their conference experience, then you're speaking the language of your customers, and indeed you're profiling yourself and your venue as a very important partner in their conference team. And we always want to be positioning ourselves as this partner as opposed to a supplier, really. So spending time talking about the layout and how the networking space flows and how that impacts the success of a conference is very interesting conversation for the planner. So the design of space and the impact when people walk into a room, when people walk into your venue for the first time, it can have an effect on people's mood, on how easy it is for them to meet people, on their ability to absorb information, you know, which I think is really, really interesting, how they will retain and recall information, and the design of space will overall, you know, have an impact on the emotional experience that they have at a conference, what they will remember and what they will talk about. Ultimately, the space will have an impact on what they walk away thinking and saying about the hotel or the venue, or indeed the conference itself, because a planner really wants her delegates walking out, you know, recommending that conference. And of course, you want your participants, conference delegates, or this army of 100, 200, 300 people walking out, talking about your conference space and to their connections, to the people that they know, to the associations that they are a member of. Perhaps they're getting ideas on what they can do with their team and want to bring them back. But that's the effect that Changing the Conversation had with fellow IACC members here at Wheatwood Hall in the UK. They converted a piece of business worth 250,000 within a number of weeks of changing how they talked about their space. Now, this was a client who was a walk-in. She hadn't made an appointment. The difference is she also walked into 3 other venues that day in Leeds, just turned up unannounced, and they had their wows in place. They knew how to direct the conversation, and it paid off big time for them. But what it really is about here, folks, is it's no longer about how you want to sell. It's all about how the planner wants to buy. And we want to make sure that we were focused in on that and we understand how they want to buy. And the fabulous thing about this, guys, is when we have this skill is it helps you to take back control of the sales conversation. And that is another frustration that I would hear out there, that we've lost control as salespeople. These steps to win are about how the planner wants to buy, as opposed to how you want to sell. So once we align our sales process with how the planner buys, everything gets a little bit easier. So, let me know, is that something that's of importance to you in how to really take back control of the sales conversation? Because Antonio now feels he's in control and he's delighted, and of course, business and revenue is up. Sales ultimately is about leadership. And are we talking about this return on investment? Or are we using the phrases even cost, price, and rates? And I love to use that investment, even in your proposals, to put that as a heading, investment, rather than the price, because decision makers are focused on a return on investment. And you always want to be planting that seed with potential clients. And I know, Mark, you feel very strongly about this. Are we talking about meeting design, or the experience that they're having, versus a conference room that fits 300? Because we want to be talking about how we're designing meetings and the experience that a participant, and indeed the planner themselves, are having. And I feel very strongly about stopping this dates, rates, and space conversation, because that ultimately is what is helping to commoditize venues and hotels and keep the conversation around rates. You want to stand out from the pack at every part of the sales conversation. So, at the moment, how are you describing your event space? If you have the luxury there of being right beside the laptop, please do type in, what words, how are you describing your event space right now? And, I'm going to share some ideas on how perhaps we could turn that around. So how is the pace going? Is everything okay there in the chat box? Am I speaking too fast? Is the Irish accent too strong for anybody?
So there's no comments in the chat box, so everyone's absorbing it, I'm sure, Kiara. But as you say, well, here's one. Pace is good, so everyone can hear you. I think I'll just take the opportunity to both reinforce what you're saying about the terminology, but also some food for thought, and something that I see a lot now is just equally as the advice to venue operators and salespeople is to consider yourself a experienced creator, a consultant, somebody who's offering a service that will help deliver a great meetings experience. All of that is really, really important. And as I say, in support of what you're saying, over commoditize it, or selling as a commodity turns you into a commodity. I think you're quite right. But there is equally the pressure on our meeting planners and conference organizers to be creating meetings experiences with a higher return on investment for the money that they are spending. So they're feeling the same pressure, or the pressure to achieve the same thing internally from their managers, their bosses, or their members if they're an association. And they're looking for venues that can help take some of that burden off their shoulders. So if you are really creative, if you tap into creating the wows, the experiences, the elements of the meeting that you wouldn't normally get at a venue, then that can be seen as a really great resource to the meeting planners that many venues still don't offer. It's incredible, how low the bar is out there with your competitor set. Obviously never with an IACC property, but outside of IACC.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the wonderful thing about the IA community. You do have an edge in a lot of this. But I feel that we still can sometimes be selling ourselves short. Some planners have even said to me, Mark, I would like for my venue partner to challenge me and to, ask, why that, and what is the reasons behind it. Okay, and it's really just about helping them to think, because they're coming from a crazy environment. They've been given a brief, probably a very vague brief, by their stakeholders, and they're made and asked to come up with something, probably a very short length of time. So absolutely, I'm going to talk more about positioning yourself as this expert and advisor. And I can see there Candace talking about natural light, space designed specifically for meetings. And I'm going to share a little bit more on how we can peel back that onion and go a little bit deeper and talk more about this natural light and the benefit to the client. Because ultimately it's about getting a yes at each step of the client's decision-making process. And sometimes we can get to the end and we're confident we've won the business, and we're waiting for that email or that phone call or that nod to say, yes, you won it. And then we could hear the opposite and our competitors won it and we're devastated, right? And what I've seen from being on the buyer side is that that can mean that you didn't get a yes at some of the early stages in their decision making process, and we didn't perhaps tap into the emotions enough behind the sale. So we're going to talk about how space communicates a message and how you can take your potential clients that little bit deeper. And how are we talking about how we help people to connect? Because when you think of it, why do most people go to events? The placing of furniture and the design of a space influences how people socialize and how they move around a room, where we're placing plants, where we're placing our pop-up tables, our tall boys, all of that kind of thing. And how are we helping people to congregate and meet people easily? Space helps deliver a message with impact, and I'd love to see more of how we can talk about space in that regard, because I feel very strongly, Mark, that it is the venue's role to help facilitate networking and helping people to start a conversation. A lot of people who go to events aren't, these really outgoing people. They are introverts and can be shy to walk up to a stranger, and that can be something that holds people back and can affect their their desire to even go to an event. They can be standing there like, oh, I hope somebody comes up talking to me, or they take out their phone, right? So it's about how do we help start the conversation, and the space outside the conference room is just as important to the success of an event as the conference room itself. And let's not overlook the fabulous space that so many IAC venues have. I'm referring in particular to the Lensbury Hotel that I was in last year, where they have over 12 little nooks and crannies where people can start conversations. And of course, such an IX standard is, your nourishment hubs and your constant all-day breaks, right? And millennials in particular, and more people now, they just want to be able to take a break when they feel like it and not be told you have to wait until 11 o'clock. But these nourishment hubs, and in particular, how well food is presented, it helps to start a conversation. And I know myself, I was at an MPI conference, Mark, there in Copenhagen, which I believe you were at. But on the Friday morning, they served these little shot glasses, and it looked like whiskey for all the world. And of course, I was curious about it, so I picked it up and I turned to a girl standing right beside me and I said, would you like to do a shot with me? And so we did, down the hatch. And of course, it was this, super healthy detox drink. But she turned out to be a fabulous contact for me, and we're in contact since, and we've been helping each other out. But that little shot glass started that conversation.
And if I
People.
can,
Mhm.
Kiara, I was just going to give one other example, because I think as well for IAC members, sometimes we take for granted these great spaces that we've got outside of the meeting environments. And and one example is that we have these nourishment hubs. We have our centralized tea and coffee service areas with seating. Think of our competitors that don't have that, and think about how we sell the benefits of that. So you mentioned about the power of networking. And one of the ways of presenting the great spaces that we've got within our conference centres would be, to picture a delegate when they arrive. So when that delegate arrives and they know nobody, one of the first things they are going to want to do is to probably start and find a space that they can not take cover, but they can just sit down, start to weigh up their surroundings, start to understand who's there, and maybe make a connection with one person who's another delegate, and then another person, and gradually find their way into building relationships and the event. Think of that if you go into a hotel or a property where the only tea and coffee area is a dedicated one in a corridor, standing room only, just for your conference, and you've got like 100 people all milling around there. It's not the same environment, and you probably will feel quite uncomfortable, because I've walked into those rooms with 100 people looking at you. So it's just about maybe presenting the great facilities that we've got, absolutely linked to the individual and delegate's journey, and and the objectives, whether they're networking or creativity or whatever, and sell to those messages specifically.
Yeah, talk about that. Tell those kind of stories for sure. It's key. I feel a lot of people just sell themselves short and say, look, we have this. People can come in here all times of the day, but it's essential to link it to what's really important to the participants, because that has an impact on how people feedback to the planner, their satisfaction scores. And if you can say, well, I helped a planner increase their satisfaction scores by 5% because of this, then you have the planner's attention. Would you agree? Absolutely right. So, people need to get away from all the information that's been fed to them in this conference room. They need space and they need time to filter and to digest it. And, networking friendly food is definitely something that a lot of IAC members have mastered. And it's about talking about that, and indeed the effect that that has on people, on the attendees. Okay. I walked into a conference in Slovenia, and they had the room set up very different. And once you walked in, you were maybe expecting it to set up standard cabaret style or theater style, but there was these kind of funky chairs, and the effect of that was people were networking in the room at the conference so much more, and not everything was relied upon just outside the conference room. To the right of this, there was plenty of chairs set up theater style, but this immediately said, wow, today is going to be different. There's going to be something else happening in this room, and that affects atmosphere. That affects how people are willing to sit up and engage and not take out the phone straight away. And if you can show planners how you're helping them to do that, that's a really interesting and very, very important conversation to be having with your future clients. Meetings continue beyond the meeting room, and the venue setup and style must absolutely facilitate this. IAC, Mark, remember at your IAC conference in New York, the best place to hang out was at these stations, because everybody needed to charge their phone. Everybody was traveling, and great conversations started around these. So there's a lot more great information that Mark and his team have put together on the meeting room of the future. So check that out on the website. But let's look at the space that we are creating for people to talk and have these maybe one-on-one conversations, so the food can help to spark conversation, or artwork can help to spark conversation, and the way you have furniture placed. And then you want people to find their own little place and maybe have that all important business conversation, which can be, you know, the best conversation perhaps that they've had, and they've met potential clients, or they're exchanging fabulous ideas, whatever that may be. The venue has a key role to play in that exchange of information, and we need to talk about that a lot more, because it's one of the big reasons why people attend conferences. And if you can help the planner to get more people to their events, then all of a sudden you're a lot more important and relevant to them also. Are we helping them to connect and indeed share and talk about the conference? Perhaps you're short on breakout space. This was a fun and interesting way that can be done. And at the World Education Congress, I don't know whether you spent any time in these spaces, Mark, but you know, there was a lot of little campfire sessions happening. The venue didn't need to have 10 breakout rooms or smaller breakout rooms. That could all happen under the space of their main room, and they're fun, you know, quirky kind of things that people talk about also. Okay, so belief number 2, that you as your salesperson, as an event person, can't impact how people learn at a conference, or if they recall or retain the information shared. I believe that you can. Space must influence and help participants retain, recall, and implement the knowledge that they have learned after they leave. And that's Jeff Hurt is a great guy in our industry. I have a lot more on this in the book. Fiona is an Irish lady. She's a space architect, and she observes how people use space, how they move around. And I had a fascinating conversation with her in 2013, and that kind of started me on this whole area of meeting design. But space, we must help them, the attendees, the participants, to move around, to speak with people, to discuss what they just heard. That's really key. That's going to help people to digest it, to filter it, to remember it, and indeed practice it. And that's why it's important also to ask, what are people going to be doing in the room? And this can be an opportunity to upsell to a larger space in order to try and facilitate this. Okay. Anne Hansen is a fabulous lady in the industry on meeting design. We remember 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we hear and see, 80% of what we say, but 90% of what we say and do. And helping planners to really, you know, reinforce this, get people practicing, get people talking, give them time to digest, to discuss what they just heard is really key. This is one of Anne's meeting designs, and this was a very tech conference where they were trying to get a team of people to figure out how they needed to communicate with each other in new software that they were developing. And you could have made it very boring and very complicated with, you know, charts and all the rest, but they made it fun, and they literally had people up walking around with wool and tying them to these different hubs that represented different areas of the technology software. And it really helped people to step back, get perspective, and see how important it was that they put all of this together and that they communicated everything together. So natural light, Candice, I'm delighted that you brought that up earlier. Natural light, the happiness factor, and helping the planner to say yes. You know, the amount of natural light and wavelength of light affects the different functions of the brain. I'm not going to get too scientific on you here, but this can affect the regulation of a person's thoughts and feelings. So with this knowledge comes a realization that even simple adjustments in lighting of workspace and event space can make a lot of difference to the way a person thinks and feels. Okay, and I can quote that from from a study on examined existence. So much of the time, Mark, when I was a venue finder, I walked in and I was, getting the tour of a space, and many meeting an event salespeople would say, look, we've lots of natural light in here, but we're selling ourselves short if that's all we are saying. We need to talk about the effect that that has on the participant. And I know myself, I went to a conference that I was delighted to go to 3 years in a row. And then all of a sudden, we were in a space that didn't have natural daylight in the conference room, which is okay, but it also didn't have it in the networking space. And that really affected me because I started to feel like a mushroom as the day was going on. And there was one small little window down towards the end, and I just found myself gradually going towards that window, and everybody was trying to gather around it. So, if you have lots of natural light and a quick access to outside, let's talk about that and the effect that it has on the brain, because it can open up every learning center in our brain. Two of the big reasons why people attend conferences is to make connections and to learn. So when we're talking about this and how your space, your facilities, the setup, your team's knowledge can help to do that, then you have the planner's interests. Sean Acor is a wonderful author of The Happiness Advantage. And from his research in Harvard, this is one of his quotes. When we as human beings are positive, our brains become more engaged, more creative, more motivated, more energetic, more resilient, and productive. So I know in my heart and my soul that so many of you are producing and helping to keep people happy. So this is an effect that this has on people, because when we're happy, we have more dopamine in our system. It's our brain just starts generating that, and dopamine turns on every learning center in the human brain. So there it is. How about quoting this in your proposals? Okay. If you don't have natural light in your venue or in your meeting space, don't worry. I've given plenty ideas on how to create an illusion in my book, okay? But ultimately, the way to a customer's heart is, it's more than a loyalty program. It's making advocates and creating experiences worth talking about. And a client's first experience is with you, or perhaps some of the sales tools that your department has created. So it's essential to really design the kind of experience that the client has, because indirectly, if they're a little bit frustrated at the beginning of their buying process with you, if they find they're having to pull information out of you, they're not getting what they need from the website because perhaps they're not ready to engage with you yet, if they don't get everything that they need in the all-important proposal, they're a little bit irked, they're a little bit frustrated. And what that indirectly communicates to them is that delivery on the day won't quite be as smooth as they need it to be. And even though your venue might have excellent customer service and excellent delivery standards, that's what can be what we're communicating. And again, I didn't see that until I became a venue finder and experienced all of these emotions myself when I was trying to find out and decide if I would send an RFP to a particular venue. Because it's not about how you want to sell, it's about how the planner, your future client, wants to buy, and getting a yes at each step. So third belief, how are we doing there, Mark? Is everything okay? Is my pace okay? Is
Everything is
everybody
doing
saying?
good, Kiara. No more questions.
Anybody saying that's no more questions? Nobody's saying that's complete and utter tribe, Kira. We don't believe you. None of that yet. No.
Nobody's testing you at the moment. I encourage anybody
Okay.
on here to offer any contrary opinions, or indeed any examples as well, to share with each other that reinforces what you're saying, Kiara.
Okay, cool. Okay. So belief number 3, I hear this all the time from so many people in the different workshops around the world. We lost the business because of rate, okay? Sometimes the planner can tell you that to let you down easily and not go into all of the details. But let's look at a few reasons why I'm thinking and saying this, okay? Sometimes we can position ourselves as the supplier indirectly, not with intention, but we really need to be positioning ourselves as this partner in how we're talking about it, how we're relevant to the client, how we're opening up and starting the conversations, and not getting into dates, rates, and space too early. We need to engage them, tap into the emotions, and find out an awful lot more about the event before we get to this stage. And Justine, she's a fabulous lady in the industry, but she can see that it's all about making the client journey that much better. And Anthony did believe this. And in his market right now, there's a rate war, and he really did believe this. But he changed his conversation. He gave it a go, and he felt great having a different type of conversation with the client. And ultimately, this was the business result. He got 3 events worth 220,000 in the last 3 months. And Anthony, he was almost apologetic for spending an hour on the phone to the client. But if you get that time, it is amazing. It's fabulous, and it shows you that they're interested, that you have pulled them in. And a key way to do that, and the new competitive advantage, really is thinking like the customer and making that journey all about them. And some people forget to do the basics, and it's really all about going back to doing the basics brilliantly. As I say, we can underestimate the power of the basics, but really it is the edge. It gives us the edge because clients are making assumptions at very early stages, and how well we are doing the basics. So, we could set ourselves the challenge of how can we get 1% better at talking about our venue? What can we change? What little thing can we tweak? And that will have an impact on, on our business and what we're ultimately delivering at the end of the day. If we could do a few things just 1% bigger, it can have a really big impact. And Tunda did that, and look at the massive results. They doubled their sales between September 2016 over the year before, and they made little tweaks. And these are 4 areas for my directors and the sales managers out there to really look at. Are we looking at the strategy and the techniques that we're using in order to really pull in and be this magnet to the client? Our sales tools are a key way of being more relevant and communicating that from a distance, because I understand you can't always get a conversation straight away with them. We need to earn it. And one way that they will judge if they're going to give you that time is looking at the sales tools. Are they having a great experience with that on your website, with your floor plans, through the proposal, through your marketing material, and ultimately, as I call it, this conversation checklist, or killer questions when we do get to that stage with the client. Are we showing that, the relationships that are of value? Are we building and training our team on how to have relationships that are of value, and positioning ourselves as this partner instead of as the supplier? Because, Mark, you alluded to this, the role of events people in this industry is changing from being that salesperson, to being a consultant, to being this trusted advisor, and indeed an educator. So, we've shared a number of things here today, guys. What's your next step? What do you want to do in order to to perhaps get to that next level? What are you going to take from today's conversation to help really move you to that next level? Because mastering sales skills equals real revenue growth. It very much it is all about how can we position ourselves different? What can we get better at? Don't be looking for it to get better, the process to get better. It's what can we get better at? And that ultimately makes the role more enjoyable, a lot more fun, and just feel natural. You know, when you're doing what you're designed to do, and you're working in your groove. Okay, so what is your one thing? I always finish up my sessions with what is your one thing that you're going to take from this, that the last 40, 50 minutes of your life was not a waste. Let's write it down, because when we do that, it helps us to commit to it. I had shared a workbook with you. I hope you have plenty of notes in there, but write that down. What's your one thing? And I'd love it if you would share that with us on the webinar, in the chat room there. And buyers have changed the way that they buy, but have you or your team changed the way that you sell? And if not, it's definitely time to make that step. So for everybody's participation today, I'd like to offer you a strategy session. If you want to pick up the phone, arrange to have a 20-minute call with me, and let's discuss that one thing. I'm happy to do that. I am aware that we still have to do the competition. I'm going to take a look back through the comments, and we'll make that happen for you. Okay, so I just don't want to make a rush decision right now, but let's share what was of most value to you today. Have we any stuff coming in there, Mark?
We haven't yet, Chiara, but I'll certainly add it if I'll mention it if anything does.
Okay. Well, I see one there. We're going to try and work on the vocabulary I use when I talk about my event space. Fantastic. And I hope that we've shared a number of different ideas on that today. Okay.
Great. And Laura mentioned that she thinks the killer question section was great. So so you hit the mark there, Chiara.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, it's fabulous when you change the conversation and you can feel the effect that it is having on your clients, on potential clients, and of course it just feels so much more natural, and that's what a lot of people say to me. It just feels really, really great that they have the opportunity to do that. So with your permission, folks, we will take a look through the chat, and I'll email you out who is the winner of this free space. Okay. Any questions at all, the chat box is open, or you can send me an email once you've had time to digest and let this information percolate. Sometimes it kind of happens on the drive home when you're thinking things through a little bit, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, what about this? Feel free to do that, okay?
Well, Chiara, thank you very much for that session. I'll just close by recommending that for those of you who haven't read the IACC Meeting Room of the Future research, there's lots of great ideas and trends and tips and different approaches that different IACC members around the world are adopting, and they're all linked to the reasons that Chiara has given. So you can download that. That's free of charge. And of course, one of the great ways to exchange ideas that are going to help us sell more effectively and position our product more effectively is coming along to our meetings and conferences. So our next one is in Lisbon for those of you on the call from Europe. Also, we do have a number of members coming from the US as well. That's on October the 5th to the 7th. And we will definitely be spending time around meeting design, trends, challenges in sales and marketing. And then we've just announced our dates for our Americas conference, which we're going to Toronto for the first time back in over the Canadian border, first time in 15 years, and that is April the the 10th through to the 11th next year in the centre of the wonderful city of Toronto. So do mix our online learning and opportunities that we have here with our regional meetings and of course our annual conferences. But thank you all for joining the webinar today. I hope that's been an hour well spent. Kiera, thank you for a great session that you've delivered there and for sharing your tips and your wisdom. And we hope that you'll register for next week's webinar, which has a different format, a different theme. Thank you for being a part of today, everyone.